Okay, think about this. In the late 19th century, Japan pulled off one of the most incredible transformations in history. It went from a feudal society, we're talking samurai and shoguns, to a modern industrial powerhouse in just a blink of an eye, historically speaking. And you know what was at the very heart of that revolution? It wasn't just guns or factories. It was something way more fundamental, the law. This is the story of how Japan fought a battle over its own legal soul, all to claim its place on the world stage.
But let me start by asking you a question. Just imagine for a second that you live in a country where a foreigner could commit a crime right on your street and your courts couldn't do a thing about it. They'd be tried by their own country's laws on your soil. How would that make you feel? Well, for Meiji Japan, this wasn't some thought experiment. It was a humiliating, everyday reality.
And this reality had a name: extraterritoriality. It was a special privilege that 16 Western powers forced on Japan through a series of, frankly, unequal treaties. So for Japan's new leaders, getting rid of this wasn't just about national pride. It was the number one reason, the biggest driver for creating an entire modern legal system basically from scratch. So when the new Meiji government took over in 1868, they were caught in this massive double bind. They had two huge problems hitting them at the exact same time. One was threatening to tear the nation apart from the inside, and the other was pressing in from the outside. See, internally, Japan wasn't really a single country yet. It was more like a patchwork quilt of about 300 different feudal domains. Each one was ruled by a lord, a daimyo, who was pretty much the king of his own little province. They had their own armies, their own local rules, some even had their own money. So before Japan could become a modern nation, it first had to become a single, unified state with one set of laws for everybody. And that brings us right back to that external problem. There was this earnest desire, as they put it, to get back legal control over all the foreigners in their country. The Western powers justified their special treatment by saying Japan's laws were, incomplete and uncivilized. So to be treated like an equal, Japan had to prove them wrong. They had to build a legal system so modern, so sophisticated that nobody could possibly object to it. To tackle this massive problem, Japan looked to the West for an expert. And in 1873, they hired one of the biggest legal minds in Europe, a French jurist named Gustave Boissonade. His mission, should he choose to accept it, was to draft the entire legal framework, penal, criminal, and civil codes, that would launch Japan into the modern age. And Boissonnade's goal was crystal clear. He wasn't just writing a textbook, he was on a diplomatic mission. He said it himself. His goal was to create laws so undeniably modern and just that the Western powers would have no excuse, not even a flimsy pretext, to hang on to their special rights. But over the 20 years he spent in Japan, Boissonnade's thinking, well, it changed. He started out as this pragmatic scholar, pulling good ideas from laws all across Europe. But over time, he became a total champion of the French system. He started arguing that the Napoleonic Code was the quintessential law of civilized peoples, and that it absolutely had to be the foundation for Japan. And when people started criticizing his work, he became its fiercest, most passionate defender. And oh boy, did that criticism come. In 1890, when Boissonnade's French-style civil code was finally published, it was supposed to be this huge moment of triumph. But instead, it kicked off a furious national debate. And this wasn't just some dry legal argument among scholars. This was a battle for the very identity of modern Japan. Two sides formed up really fast. On one side, you had the decisive faction, mostly lawyers trained in the French tradition. Their argument was, this code is a masterpiece. It's essential for modernization. Let's get it done now. But on the other side, you had the postponement faction, mostly scholars of English and American law, and they were saying, whoa, hold on. This thing is a foreign transplant. It's totally alien to our customs, our family structures. We have to delay this. Boissonade was, to put it mildly, frustrated. He saw all this opposition as a kind of wary patriotism, this fear of accepting foreign ideas even when they were needed for progress. He argued that, hey, every great civilization in history borrowed from others. Look at Rome, look at France. Why should Japan be ashamed of doing the exact same thing? While the debate just raged on for 3 years, until 1892, when something pretty unthinkable happened. Japan's brand new parliament, the Imperial Diet, actually voted to postpone the code. Just like that, Boissonnade's life's work was put on ice. For the government and for him, it was a massive, stunning defeat. It was time to go all the way back to the drawing board. But what came out of the ashes of that controversy was something totally new. The government put together a new commission, but this time it was made up entirely of Japanese jurists. And yeah, a lot of them were from that postponement faction. They didn't just tweak Boissonnade's draft. They threw it out and started over, recasting it completely.
This new committee made a huge pivot. They moved away from the French model and looked instead to the brand new, super systematic German civil code for their inspiration. And you can see this shift just in how the code is structured. The French code starts with persons, family, marriage, personal status. But the new Japanese code, just like the German one, starts with property and obligations, the real nuts and bolts of a modern capitalist economy. That was a huge statement about their priorities. But this also pointed to a really deep philosophical shift. See, Boissonnade's code was built on the European idea of natural law, this belief that some rights are just universal, that you're born with them. The new Japanese framers? They rejected that idea. They took a much more pragmatic view. Rights aren't natural. Rights are what the law, created by people, says they are. Full stop. It was a profoundly modern and, you could say, a distinctly Japanese way of looking at the world. So after all that, what's the big takeaway from this 30-year legal saga? Well, it was about so much more than just words on a page. This was a story about a nation wrestling with its past and its future, all at the very same time. Finally, in 1898, the new code went into effect. The long, difficult struggle was over. Japan, at last, had its modern legal system. And it wasn't just a carbon copy of a Western one. It was something new, something forged in the fire of its own intense debates. And this whole process teaches us some really powerful lessons. For Japan, changing the law was a fight for its very sovereignty. It showed that borrowing ideas from other cultures is never simple. It forces a country to ask some really deep questions about who it is. The final code wasn't French or German. It was a unique Japanese hybrid. And through this incredible struggle, Japan didn't just build a legal system. It forged its own modern legal identity. And that leaves us with one final big question. It's one that countries all over the world are still grappling with today. How does a nation modernize? How does it adopt ideas from the outside without losing the very soul of what makes it unique?